Hello and good afternoon. I'm Mohana Priya. Welcome to Updates at Noon. Police have set up roadblocks in 4 locations and closed 11 rat routes in Amanjaya, Sungai Petani, Kedah, following the implementation of the Administrative Enhanced Movement Control Order, EMCO. Kuala Muda Police Chief ACP Adzli Abu Shah said the roadblocks involved roads heading to Ampangan Height, in which housing areas in Melo, Kenanga and Mawa zone were put under the Administrative EMCO. He said barbed wire fences were installed at the administrative EMCO areas, while concrete blocks were placed to close the rat tracks. The Kuala Muda Police Chief added that the EMCO areas would be manned by 26 police personnel and 93 officers, as well as 6 armed forces and 16 RELA members. Malaysians can now see for themselves the behind-the-scene efforts by the frontliners in the country's battle to break free from COVID-19 in a short video produced by the Health Ministry in conjunction with the National Month celebration. The YouTube link of the 10-minute video was shared by Health Director General Tan Sri Dr. Nur Hisham Abdullah on his Facebook account.
That is the first battle we won.
Among those featured in the video were Tan Sri Dr. Nur Hisham himself, along with his War General, Deputy Director General of Health, Medicine cum Crisis Preparedness and Response Centre Advisor, Datuk Dr. Rohaizat Yon, and other medical heroes. The video also depicted the advancement of the CPRC as the coordination centre in the fight against the pandemic. Tan Sri Dr. Nur Hisham expressed hope that the short documentary could inspire Malaysians to continue to work together by playing their respective roles in fighting the COVID-19, as well as to follow the standard operating procedures set to break the virus chain. The Electoral Reform Committee, ERC, yesterday submitted 49 recommendations on electoral reform to Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin for the purpose of improving the system. Its chairman, Tan Sri Abdul Rashid Abdul Rahman, said the Premier, when receiving the report at his office in Parliament, has given the assurance that the government would look into all the recommendations thoroughly. Tan Sri Abdul Rashid said there was no time frame set for the government to implement the recommendations submitted.
Dimuat sama dalam laporan itu ialah syur-syur berkaitan dengan langkah-langkah yang sesuai yang perlu dipertimbangkan bagi melaksanakan seberapa yang boleh dan dalam jangka masa yang sesuai. Syur-syur yang telah dikemukakan.
However, he said 32 of the recommendations can be implemented within 3 years if approved by the government, while the rest may take between 5 and 10 years to materialize. Tan Sri Abdul Rashid said among the recommendations was to separate the functions of the Election Commission into 3 bodies to boost public confidence in the EC. He said EC would remain as the main body in enforcing election laws. The Election Secretariat would conduct the election process, while the Commission for Redelineation of Electoral Boundaries would be responsible for administrating certain matters related to the redelineation exercise. ERC was established in August 2018 to study the existing electoral system and laws. The Kuala Lumpur High Court yesterday allowed the prosecution's application to amend the forfeiture notice against hundreds of handbags of various brands, as well as cash, watches and 27 cars that were seized from former Prime Minister Datuk Sri Najib Tun Razak, his wife Datin Sri Rosmah Mansor and 16 others. Judge Muhammad Zaini Mazlan allowed the application after Deputy Public Prosecutor Fatin Hadni Khairuddin informed the court that the prosecution would amend the notice of forfeiture and make corrections in 3 supporting affidavits to support the notice of motion. Fatin Hadni said the amendment was also necessary due to errors in the bank account number, account type, bank name and branch, as well as the date of seizure on the notice of motion and the supporting affidavits. Meanwhile, lawyer Fazreen Hazrina Rahim, representing Datuk Sri Najib, said the respondent did not object to the prosecution's application, but requested that the process of gazetting the notice to a third party be expedited. Lawyers for the other respondents also did not object to the prosecution's application. The gazetting of the third-party notice is to enable interested parties to appear before the court to provide reasons on why the assets should not be forfeited by the government. The court set 4th September for case management. Barisan National Chairman Datuk Sri Dr. Ahmad Zahid Hamidi has stressed again that the support given by the party to the Perikatan Nasional or PN government only involves the support from BN members of parliament and assemblymen, not its component parties. He said this in response to the announcement made by MIC that it would not be joining PN as its component party, but will continue to support the leadership of the current government.
Ini berarti biarpun Perikatan Nasional itu telah mungkin didaftarkan dan disahkan penubuhannya, tetapi MIC bukan lagi sebagai anggota Pro-Tem Komiti atau jawatankuasa penaja kepada Perikatan Nasional.
Earlier, MIC Secretary General Dato' M. Asojan Muniandi was reported as saying that the party had initially agreed to join PN on the assumption that BN and UMNO would do the same. Meanwhile, Datuk Sri Dr. Ahmad Zahid said he had informed Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin that UMNO and Parti Bersatu Rakyat Sabah (PBRS) candidates will be using BN logo in the Sabah state election next month. The Sabah election involves 1.12 million voters and has been set on 26th September, with a nomination on 12th September and early voting on 22nd September. The Domestic Trade and Consumer Affairs Ministry in Kedah seized 212,040 kilograms of subsidized fertilizer worth 287,000 ringgit in a raid on a warehouse in Jalan Kumbar, Alustar. Its enforcement chief, Muhammad Shahran Muhammad Arshad, said a man believed to be the warehouse worker in his 40s was arrested for further investigations. Muhammad Shahran said investigations also found that the surplus of subsidized fertilizer was bought from farmers around the area to be repackaged and sold around Alustar. He said it was believed that the subsidized fertilizer was bought at about 20 ringgit per bag before being repackaged and sold at more than 100 ringgit for each bag weighing 50 kilograms. Based on the information gathered, he said the warehouse is believed to have been operating for the past 20 years and the case is being investigated under Section 20, Subsection 1 of the Control of Supplies Act 1961. The Kedah, KPD and HEP are conducting further investigation to track down the warehouse owner. AirAsia Group Berhad is calling on ASEAN leaders in Green Zone countries to be brave and relook at reopening borders. Expressing hope for a green lane such as that set up by Malaysia and Singapore, Group Chief Executive Officer Tan Sri Tony Fernandez said as the number of COVID-19 cases has reduced, it is an opportunity for other countries such as Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia and Laos to slowly and carefully relook at opening their borders without too much risk.
So I hope, if you look at Thailand, which has less than 10 people a day, if you look at Malaysia, which has, done a great job, less than 10 people a day, why can't Malaysia and Thailand have a green lane? It's no different from flying to KK or Penang. Penang is just on the border of Thailand anyway, right? So I hope we take some small steps, careful steps, to start reopening international borders.
Tan Sri Tony Fernandez was met after launching AirAsia Shop in KL Central. He also expected that there would be no international travel until the end of this year. But AirAsia is always prepared for any decisions taken by the government, including border reopening. He also hoped AirAsia would not have to undergo another downsizing, as travel demand would likely normalize by January next year. Malayan banking Berhad or Maybank's net profit fell to 941.73 million ringgit for the second quarter ended 30th June 2020, hit by the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic compared with 1.94 billion ringgit recorded in the same period last year. Revenue declined to 11.79 billion ringgit from 13.05 billion ringgit previously. The bank said net fund-based income for the quarter came in lower by 326.5 million ringgit compared with the same period last year, mainly as a result of the Day 1 modification loss arising from the blanket moratorium for fixed-rate financing and the 50 basis points cut in the overnight policy rate.
That there might be a further cut of 25 basis points. If that happens, of course, it will benefit the fixed income that we have in our books, depending on how it's reflected on the yield itself in the first place. But as far as NIM is concerned, because the two impact, right? One is the NIM, the one is on the bond. If that happens, then it might have a negative impact on NIM of about 1 to 2 basis points.
Nevertheless, he said Maybank's strategy in maintaining superior liquidity and capital levels has assisted the bank greatly, and it would continue to maintain a strong balance sheet in order to have the capacity to pursue business opportunities when the cycle picks up. On automatic moratorium, which is expiring on 30th September, he noted that the number of customers that had approached Maybank for further assistance program is still very small. He said the customers who had been unemployed because of COVID-19, Maybank could offer the same kind of moratorium until the end of the year, while those whose income had been reduced, their repayment schedule can be worked out based on the reduction and repayment capability. BIMP Holdings Berhad has posted a lower net profit of 153.03 million ringgit in the second quarter ended 30th June 2020 from 195.16 million ringgit in the same period last year. Revenue also declined to 1.14 billion ringgit from 1.33 billion ringgit previously. In a filing with Bursa Malaysia, BIMP attributed the weaker performance to the impact of lower net financing income arising from multiple downward revisions of the overnight policy rate (OPR) and the recognition of modification loss due to moratorium exercise in April 2020. It said its banking arm, Bank Islam Malaysia Berhad's assets portfolio quality remained strong as reflected in the low gross impact financing ratio of 0.7% as at 30th June, half of the 1.5% for the banking system as of end June 2020, while total gross impact financing stood at 371.5 million ringgit. Bank Islam reported an 11.1% lower profit before zakat and tax of 389 million ringgit compared to the corresponding period in 2019 due to lower net financing income arising from multiple downward revisions of the OPR and the recognition of modification loss due to the moratorium exercise. Pursuant to the moratorium on repayment of financing, the bank had recognized a modification loss of 97.8 million ringgit. The Takaful business spearheaded by Syarikat Takaful Malaysia Keluarga Berhad, on the other hand, recorded a PBZET of 211.8 million ringgit for the first half of this year, on the back of lower operating revenue due to the lower sales generated from the family Takaful business. We begin with the local scene. The National Shooting Association of Malaysia, NSAM, plans to host 2 local competitions, either in September and November or October and December, as early preparations for next year's SEA Games in Vietnam. The 2 tournaments, National Shooting Championships and Tun Hanif Trophy, will be held at the National Shooting Range in Subang, Selangor. National Shooting Team Manager Dato' Musa Omar said NSAM had yet to decide on the suitable dates for the 2 tournaments, as they still had to streamline the standard operating procedure for the hosting of the tournaments as stipulated by the authorities. He also said that NSAM would request to the Olympic Council of Malaysia, OCM, for the team rifle event to be contested at the 2021 SEA Games, as he claimed that Vietnam planned to drop the event. Based on the provisional list, list, Vietnam plans to host 36 sports next year. They are football or futsal, athletics, aquatics, archery, badminton, basketball, boxing, canoe, cycling, dance sport and fencing, among others. The 31st edition of the SEA Games is scheduled to be held in Hanoi from 21st November to the 2nd of December next year. And that's it from us this afternoon. In our top story today, Electoral Reform Committee submits 49 election reform recommendations. News at 10 comes on this evening on My Freeview's Berita RTM News channel. I'm Mohana Priya. Have a great weekend.